Welcome to the Zesty Ginger Podcast. We are Megan and Dr. Alex. We are here for transformation. Yours, ours, and the collective. Personal and professional for practitioners. But not just any transformation. Compassionate transformation. Because between the two of us, we have seemed to have done things the painful way. Let our pitfalls become your stepping stones. We aren't afraid to share our raw and vulnerable truths in order to help you transform your thinking, your body, your heart, and your soul. Combining 15 years of functional medicine with brain-based habit change to lead you to the best life possible in a compassionate way. Compassion, yes, yet plan to roll up your sleeves. Transformation requires your participation. And a quick reminder, this information is not meant to diagnose, manage, or treat disease. Always consult with your doctor, not this doctor, before making changes. Now let's get into the episode.
Hey everybody, welcome back. Welcome back to day 4 of the challenge. You're still here. Yay.
Yay.
Okay, we're excited to have you go through this process. We're excited that you've been here. And today, we want to talk a little bit about what happens with habits. So we've noticed a pattern that will default to our old place, will default to old habits under stress. So depending on what your default setting is, that will depend where you go. So we help women really fine tune where they want to go and what they want these habits to be, so that no matter what happens, the default is going back to something you love. And these can come to some just core principles and some core ways of being that will really help you figure out what you want your identity and what you want those habits to be to work towards that identity. So, really interesting thing, my dad started to forget things when he was in his 50s. And he started to forget a lot of things. It actually got so bad that he got quite concerned and went to his doctor. And they said, we think you have early onset Alzheimer's. You're all free from this. So my dad, being a man of possibility, a man of optimism, he really is. He's the happiest guy ever. So he said, well, I'm not going to have any doctor or expert tell me what my body can or can't do or what's going to happen. He said, I may have a diagnosis, and I will still live a full and happy life. And at the same time, he's also a planner, and he also wants to under things. And he wanted to cover all of his bases. So we thought, okay, let's just say I'm not fully able to totally recover my mind to perfect working order easily and effortlessly. I better be prepared. Because my dad was said, how we all go through things in life. It's just full of things. Everything is in life, and you can never prepare for all the things. And yet when we've prepared for the part that we're aware of, it seems to be a bit smoother. So how have I been successful in the other parts of my life? Well, in his business, he'd been very successful. He's a small town owner. That's Rand's hardware store in Plymouth, New Hampshire. If you're ever there, top hardware store of the year this year, I believe. Not to brag about my dad or anything, but I will. And then he said, so I can be successful at this. So he thought about it, and he thought about, what does he do in business? What does he do in that area of life? What do you do in that area of life that you are successful? Well, in business, he had a board of directors, a group of people to lean on for advice, people to model, to guide you in the things that you don't know quite as well as they know, No, we thought, not a board of directors for business. How about a board of directors for myself? Like a personal board of directors work, shouldn't it? So he drew on all the best minds in town, being the connected guy that he is. He needed someone he could trust in all the areas of life, and someone he could model. So he had the local doctor, well, actually 2. He had financial advisors, he had a lawyer, a spiritual mentor, and some of his other closest friends who fit into different categories. In this amazing group, they rallied around him, and they began to meet every single week And their group met in this screened-in porch every Monday evening, right near this babbling brook. And they would sit in the circle with their iced tea and some snacks and started to talk. And as they talked, they all connected in more ways than they could have imagined. They're like, that happened to you? Oh, that happened to me. Well, what did you do about this or that? Here's what I did. They were forming this deep bond, this deep connection as a group. And once they get all that initial stuff out of the way, they started to look for solutions to life together. And they started to shift their focus to what they wanted in life and all the good things that had happened. They began telling stories of the good old days, being there to support each other, cheer each other on. And as it turns out, my dad wasn't the only one going on with a lot of things going on in life. So they became this amazing support system for each other. And this funny thing happened. Well, not so funny. Awesome. This connection and the pause from business, which had been his main focus up until this point, provided just a huge relief. So just a few months into their weekly meetings, he realized that his memory was totally crisp and clear. That those old signs that had been popping up, the ones that led him to the doctor, they just weren't there. And he went back to the doctor, got reevaluated, and they were just like scratching their heads like, well, Steve, looks like the markers are gone. And so not only was it not progressing, it didn't seem to be there at all. So they took back his diagnosis and they said, it must just be, I'm doing air quotes, stress.
It's always stress.
A diagnosis are really just stress in the body working to get back to homeostasis, to balance. So there he was. And as my good friend always says, your diagnosis is not your destiny. And my dad was living this. And he was modeling this amazing habit. So my dad, who's now, the time of this recording, he's 77 years old, sharp as a tack, still funny, great dad jokes.
Great dad jokes.
Right? And his board of directors, this men's group still meets every Monday to this day. It's been over 25 years. Obviously, it's shifted, it's changed. They've gone through life together. They've gone through death together. They've gone through divorce together, all the different things in life. And this group has bonded and stayed strong. And in his 70s, my dad became a state representative. He was in his first play a couple of years ago. He volunteers in all sorts of organizations. He's just always putting himself in situations where he can learn, where he can connect, and he can model others before him. And this is such a powerful habit to have. This is the habit that keeps him going. And this is the habit that when things get stressful, he defaults to this because he has lived this and he has modeled this. So I'm hoping to have that kind of amazing energy and drive when I'm in my 70s. And so I am modeling his habits in order to get there. Because our habits, right? Our habits are what create our reality, and our beliefs about our life and the world then create our habits. So our habits can be changed in any moment with a new belief, like a plan and a personal board of directors. We like to think of this like our community here at Zesty Ginger, whether it's on the podcast or Instagram, or whether you come join us for anything in the future. It's like a transformational board of directors that anyone can opt into if they wish. And you can share with us, you can learn with us, you can grow with us. And we are learning from you all the time. And we model the areas of life that we've learned deeply and are just a few steps ahead on the path. And then you and everyone else models the other areas to us, which is why you'll never catch us without having a coach or a program or learning something new.
That's so true. And that story, Meg, is so perfect because it illustrates what your dad did differently than what 99% of people are going to do. Is that most people, when they get a diagnosis like that, think in habits too. That's not different, but they think, okay, I heard if you do Sudoku, right? So I'll set up a Sudoku habit. I'll buy a bunch, but then, especially with memory loss, the tend to get stuck in a corner somewhere and not used. And the same thing is true of a lot of different habits that people say, oh, I'm going to start eating more vegetables. I'm going to stop drinking alcohol or coffee or any number of things. And what they're doing is always playing in the physical playground. They're doing kind of the opposite of what your dad did, which is just all the practical stuff that you're supposed to do for Alzheimer's, right? And the problem with that is, of course, that people don't stick with it. They think they know what they need to do, and therefore they feel good about doing it, which is the very reason that they can sometimes feel bad when they don't, right? It's because the belief is that I should be. And so the question really becomes, what was so magical about the strategy that Steve, Megan's dad, used instead, right? What's the juice? And it really comes down to when we think from a place of identity, from the higher perspective of who we are being, how we are acting, and how that functions congruently in our life. And of course, you know that by how you feel. And if you don't feel good, it's not working. Then the question becomes, who I'm becoming and the things I do as an outflow of that really depends on whether my needs and my highest values are being met by that habit. So Steve knew that, right? So Steve knew that for him, connection, community building, growth, that theater center, for the children, to have child development, all of these things to come together as a community were part of his values. It felt good. He knew that that's who he wanted to be. Same with needs. We all have different needs and different proportions of needs that feel the best to us. And when we meet those needs through our habits, life feels so congruent. It feels so fun. It feels so joyful. It feels so expansive. It feels freeing. It feels like creation. And the unity inside that happens from that, the outflow of that is healing, right? That's the lack of fragmentation is true health, true peace, joy, and all of those things that we're working towards. And the physical body followed. His brain changed. And we see this all the time. So let's take it to a habit like coffee, because we hear this all the time. Someone will want to get rid of one thing and say, it's the coffee that's making me jittery and the anxiety. And I feel that. And so I need to get rid of it. And they say, well, I'll go to tea. Tea sounds like a really great alternative. You still, drink it. It's still warm or iced or however you like it. And that's great. It's a good alternative. I hear it's less caffeine. I hear that'll cause less anxiety. Sounds like a great plan. So that person says, oh, look, I will switch to tea. And how cool, because I get to save money. I get to not go to Starbucks and I'll make tea at home. And they do that for a couple of days and they're feeling good. And then all of a sudden it's like, feeling kind of lonely today, feeling kind of stressed out. Oh, I'm celebrating something. I should treat myself. And for any number of reasons, the Starbucks run happens and it's delicious and it's caffeine and sugary and you're enjoying, and all of a sudden, boom, anxiety, right? And you think, oh, I messed up again. Now I had the coffee. And then you maybe think something like, oh, I need to get back on it, or, oh, I messed up, so I'll go back tomorrow, and whatever. This habit is just not going to happen. Well, when that happens, let's break it down from a needs and values perspective. When we go to Starbucks, what makes you go to Starbucks? Is it the feeling of I need a break? Is it I've been in the house all day long with the kids and I need adult conversation and a little contact, or I need time alone in the car, not even listening to music, just silently sit there without anybody needing anything from you, wanting anything from you, right? There's a whole series of triggers, the cue. And what happens afterwards, that even sets that whole thing off. Or maybe it's just the alarm clock goes off and it's morning time and it's on the way to work. So that's just how the day goes. That it's the certainty and the comfort of having a routine. So something will trigger the desire for the habit. Now, making tea at home, in comparison, if you're looking for connection with adults, if you're looking for time away from other people, for quality time with yourself, for quiet, for alone, making tea at home fits none of those needs. It doesn't meet the values and the desires that we have in our heart for that activity. And it becomes a little bit harder not to go to Starbucks. And same thing there, when you get to Starbucks, right? What happens? Is it the ambiance? Is it the music? Is it just being around other people? Is it the fact that you had to put on clothes and feel like a put together human to go out? When you get there, what happens? What needs are met? What feels good about that? What's juicy? What's fun, right? And when we fail to consider these things and we forget to ask who we're becoming, why we're becoming that, and what we're doing with that overall, these habits that seem so easy to just swap out and have all these side benefits become much more challenging to meet. They become a hindrance and they become a block. And sometimes people get frustrated with themselves on why isn't this happening? Well, it's not addressing all of who you are, and therefore you won't stick with it. There's not enough of a juice to it. Whereas when Steve was getting connection and fun and he felt purposeful and all of these things, think about the difference. 25 years for a habit is a long habit. Everybody can say that, right? That is who he became. And when you meet Steve, you know he's into community. You know that's what his identity is, right? And so all of these facets of it, down to the nitty gritty of what we eat and how we move and what you do when the alarm clock goes off, do you reach for your phone or not? Understanding who you are, what you need, and why you do things is the most transformational way to stick to habits that are empowering and never get off them because they work. And what's beautiful about that is that they go with you as you evolve, right? The way that Megan was saying her dad and his friends meet right now is completely different 25 years later. But each step along the way, it was that cohesive, unified approach that said, this feels so good to me because my needs are met. And guess what? I'm the kind of person that does that. That is inherent to who I am. So the habit of confidence, the habit of self-trust, the habit of compassion, the habit of being courageous, all of those things are then possible when we feel that our needs are met and we are living in congruency with our values. It is the most powerful place to be because that's the way unification happens. That's all of you getting on board. And when we make decisions about habits from there, very little can shake us. Very little can come sweep us away. And sometimes we get stuck in some of these physical, but let's switch a little bit and talk about other habits, because habits are patterns of thinking, feeling, and behaving, often in that order, though it doesn't have to be, of what we do as is hardwired day in and day out. That's just the effective program to run that our brain understands. And so habits then aren't just what we do with our physical body or in our environment as it relates to our needs and values, but then it comes down to what we think and what we feel and how we express that. And so one of the habits that we see a lot that people often know about but have a hard time shifting is venting and bitching, right, Meg? Venting and bitching becomes a habitual way of interacting with ourselves in the world that can keep so many people stuck. And we've seen it time and time again, though, because people are usually thinking habits around food or exercise, this one really goes missed. So Megan, do you want to kick off kind of the story that you have around this habit?
It just seems to be one of the most common patterns that keeps people stuck and really kept me stuck. I recognized that I was telling my story over and over to people who would agree with me, like, this really bad thing happened to me, or my body's really not acting the way I want it to. And I would tell that story to them, to the people who I knew would be like, yeah, you're right. Those people are horrible, or your body sucks, right? Like they're going to agree with you, and you feel better momentarily sharing that. And then at the same time, you're actually just securing more and more that belief in your subconscious. So we, Dr. Alex and I, have deals with each other about venting, and about if we're going to do it, we're going to actually be doing some physical tools to release some things, some tools that actually Dr. Alex will probably be able to give you a little tip for on tomorrow's episode.
I sure can. I think we promised it.
So there's not a rule that you can't ever do it, because we don't like the rules. And there's a way that we allow each other to do it in the most effective way, right? And then also, what are we talking about continuously? And who are the people around us? What are they talking about? And what patterns have we gotten into with them, right? Maybe I had a pattern with my husband. I would come home and then dump the day, instead of just like, hey, what's one good thing that happened? So shifting this small pattern of venting drastically shift what I saw showing up in my life, because I wasn't focusing on all my energy on the stuff I didn't want.
Right. Because venting and bitching is a beautiful way to meet the need of significance, right? It's such a beautiful way to say, my thoughts matter, and here's why I'm upset about what happened, right? We're making a case often for why we are doing what we're doing and why what's happening doesn't fit the bill. And therefore, it's not the expression of that is necessarily the problem, right? Meg and I still share authentically what's actually happening in our life. But when it comes to venting and bitching, we no longer choose to get significance in that way. That's not our significance, comes from doing this. We are doing what we're here to do in the world. We're being of service. We are pursuing our own transformation. We are becoming more and more who we are proud to be and can really stand on and back. And therefore, understanding that we were using that to get significance, identifying it, and therefore applying and finding more empowering ways to do it, really meant that the venting and bitching, I don't know, Megan, you and I didn't really focus on that, right? That wasn't where our attention lied. Right. We really said, what is the way that we want to meet those needs? What are the ways that we want to move forward? And as a consequence, we started talking, our conversations were just about more powerful things. They were simply more, quite frankly, fun, right? Because we're not rehashing the reaction that we're having to the world. We are setting the tone who we are intentionally and consciously becoming. And that feels way better to begin with. And when we don't get our needs met from old habits anymore, we don't go back to them as much, because quite frankly, the brain is smart. And if you don't get the same level of juice from something, there's less and less incentive for the brain to say, oh, there's that dopamine hit, right? And it just begins to shift focus. And so asking these questions and really understanding where you're coming from with these things, you can actually focus your energy much more powerfully on the things that will work for you and that do guide you into a better direction, which is so fun.
Absolutely. So one thing to watch for is every time you go through a thing like this and you shift to a new identity, like my dad, right? comes out on the other side, he's up-leveled, he has all these habits in play, a new identity. And there's this amazing evolution process. And the tricky part, though, in this process is if you don't know what is actually happening in your brain and the neurology, when you up level, you may start to experience some pushback, some setback, some fear. And this may have you come to the incorrect conclusion that you're not on the right path. Who's experienced this?
Ooh, me a lot.
We want you to come back tomorrow so we can help you understand how to know when you're on the right path versus when you're not on the right path, because there is this pushback that's a part of the process. And often we're jumping ship just when we're so close.
So close.
So close. All right.
Especially if you related at all to the Quit 2 Inches from Gold episode.
All right. Thank you all for being here. And you're so close. We will see you tomorrow. Thanks for coming out to hang with us on the podcast. It is our goal to transform the way women are treated in healthcare. And we need your help. We need your help to get the word out. We have a lofty goal of 1 million downloads. And we know that as this podcast grows, we're going to be able to reach more women, get more amazing speakers for you, and bring the most cutting edge information.
If you found these podclasses helpful, please take a moment to text 5 women you know the link to the series. We appreciate your help so much. Can't wait to see you next time.